So here we go, part two of the series, a brief history. So, just a brief history lesson, a small one. If you ever wondered where the Samaritans came from, if you ever wondered why there was so much hatred, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you didn't know, I hope that this brief history, the background context that I'm going to give you here, that it adds to the story. Because see, this is what it is. Our lives are stories. The way we tell them, they're testimonies, they're stories, right? So you're about to jump into the history, the background, and I hope that this background speaks to the story of the Samaritan woman and to the story of this Jew named Jesus. I hope that this helps you jump in the story a little bit more. I hope it helps you understand and the power of what happened here. Understand how this, how Jesus uses this date, this appointment, this time that he had to go there, how he uses this to destroy a social construct of that time. Different ones, in fact. And I hope you pick it up. So here we go. Before I get into the social construct of what's going on here that Jesus is shattering, let's give you a brief history. Okay? So a Jew and a Samaritan woman, their history. So before we begin to unpack this, before we start chopping it up into bite size, and I'll let you know where these Samaritans can't come from, some people have asked me, why did they hate the Samaritans? Why was there such a seated hatred in them? Why couldn't they get along? Well, let us just backtrack a little bit, okay? In order for us to grasp the deep-seated hatred here between these two groups, we first have to understand where they originated from, where some of the Samaritans came from. So we know that in 1 Kings chapter 12, that we read that Solomon's son, if I'm not pronouncing this right, go to chapter 12. 1 Kings chapter 12, all right? Solomon's son. I believe you pronounce it Rehoboam or Rehoboam. Let me find the name. Let me just find my notes where Rehoboam. That's the best that I can do now. So, the son of Solomon. Remember who Solomon was? He was the son of King David. But his mom was Bathsheba, somewhere along there. That was the son that came from that marriage. That you know the story. David took a wife that wasn't his first born with her passed away. Solomon takes the throne later on in his life. The second child he had with that woman. Now he has a son. Solomon's out of the way. Rehoboam is now the leader of these 12 tribes that David merged together, brought together. And so now we're in a very, very critical state in Israel, because something is happening to his kingdom, something is happening to the people that he rules over. And this is what's happening, that they're getting tired of the work, and they're getting tired of the taxes, and they're getting tired of the lifestyle. And they come against, not to come against him, but they come in an assembly and they want to talk to this king, and they tell him, hey, Rehoboam, here's what's going on, man. If you would only treat us, oh man, look at that, I got a fly in here, I'm sorry guys. He said, if you would only treat us better, they told him, if you would, not burden us this much, if you would just not tax us this much, if you would just govern us differently, we would love and serve you. Paraphrasing, right? But here's the thing, that he told the assembly, I'm going to take 3 days. He said, I'm going to take 3 days to think about this and seek counsel and advice. So he goes to the old man that has served with Solomon, his dad, and he asked them their counsel. And they told him, heed to the people, speak kind words to the people, don't tax them this much, and they will serve you. They will gladly do this, man. You would have their loyalty. You would. He listened to the old man and their advice, those who worked with Solomon. But then he turned and decided to also go listen to the young men, the ones that worked for him. Now, they did not give him the same answer that the old man did. So the young man said, "Hey, man, these guys are talking a little smack. These guys are giving you a little lip. These guys are not happy with you. Well, teach them a lesson," they said. All right? Tell them that what Solomon did, that you're going to do double or more. That you're going to be worse. That you're going to tax them more. And this is what was going on. He took the advice of the young people. He returned to the people and he told them, this is what he told them actually. "My little finger is thicker than my father's thighs, whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips. I will discipline you with scorpions." It was about to get serious. So now, the people of these 12 tribes are in disarray. Some sort of chaos is happening now, here and in here. And they don't want to live such a life as this. So then we have another guy who's been exiled into Egypt. It almost sounds like the same name, Jeroboam. So now he's in exile. He hears that the people are in assembly against the king and asking the king to stop the taxation, to stop this kind of life, to stop this yoke. So he takes advantage of this and he comes and joins them. And then he sees that the king is not going to relent. He sees that it's his opportunity, and they make a rebellion, they revolt, they go against this. And guess what the outcome is? So the outcome happens that the king that went in with 12 tribes, the son of Solomon, Rehoboam, well, guess what? He ends with 2 tribes. Okay? And not only does he end with 2 tribes, he ends with the city of Judah and Jerusalem and the temple in their region, in their area. That's where he got. And then this guy who was exiled that came back and helped in this uprising, he keeps 10 tribes. Okay? Now this is in 2 Kings chapter 12, where you can read about this. I'm going to jump and I'm going to go to, we also know that in the days of Nehemiah, 450 years earlier from the situation that we're reading about the Samaritan woman and Jesus, that the Samaritans were brought by the Assyrians to populate the area after removing, okay? So after removing the Jewish population, okay, here we go. So this is still some history that's going on in these 2 places. So the Assyrians removed the Jewish population, and then they planted or brought in Samaritans to repopulate. And guess what happened? Not only did they repopulate, traditions got mixed, families and marriages got mixed in the 10 tribes region. Okay, where the kingdom was divided, the one that took the 10, it started mingling with other women that were not of the Jewish nation. Their traditions, some of their practices, some of their idolatry, kind of formed a paganism hybrid religion. Okay? All right. Now, the Samaritans decided to do away with many of the books that the Jews considered to be like their Bible or their Jewish library or God's oracles. So they took so many out. They only kept, they right away they threw 24 books out and other books out, and they only kept the first 5 books of Moses. That's all they kept. That's all they kept. And from there, they decided to build and lift up this altar. Let me find the right thing. The irrigated. So they decided to accept, like I was saying, they decided to accept the 5 books of Moses known as the Pentateuch or Pentateuch. I might even pronounce it wrong both times. When the 10 tribes mixed with the Samaritans, this allowed paganism, idolatrous practices to be mingled with the law of Moses, becoming a hybrid religion. Like I said, they took it upon themselves to erect a temple at the mountain that's out there, Mount Gerizim. You figure it out. It's a mountain, all right? And this mountain served as a rival to the temple of Jerusalem. Okay, so let me just back it down. So what's going on here? So you got the 10 tribes that have mingled and mixed. You got them erecting this, building this kind of altar at the mountain, a place where they're going to be worshiping, where the mountain summits, they're there. They have their idols, they're there. All right? The 10. Because you got to remember, they don't have the temple there. Now, this serves as the rival to the temple. Okay? This serves as the holy place rival to the temple that the other two tribes got to keep. All right? Now, these other two tribes, pride themselves in their ancestry, tree, lineage, and how they've been able to stay pure in a sense for the Hebrew roots in their religion, in their families, in their bloodline. Most of these didn't mix. They tried to do the pious and righteous thing. And they had the temple, remember? They had the temple. So when all this was happening and they took over the place, they took over the Holy Land, or they took over that region, when all this was happening, many people were not happy. Jealousy, hatred, wars, rebellions. Okay, I'm going to have to get rid of this fly here quick. They were not happy. Okay, so here we go. They were hated by the Jews. The Jews hated the Samaritans. They hated them more than the Gentiles. Man. Now this is the third point. So I brought you 2 points already about the history, all the way back to First Kings, then in the time of Nehemiah. Now this is the time. It says I wrote down in 128 BC, right? 128 BC, the Jews destroyed the Samaritan temple on the summit of the mountain. All right. We can read these things and sometimes just really undermine what's going on. We're talking about some people's religion, some people's history, some people's claims. I mean, you got this one part, 2 tribes coming to destroy what 10 tribes have done. So they come and destroyed the temple on the summit, all right? What do you think the Samaritans were going to do? Just let it go? This is what they did. The Samaritans, being fueled by such an act, responded by penetrating the temple that is in Jerusalem a few years before the birth of Jesus, and they defiled the temple by spreading the bones of the dead around the areas of the temple. They defiled it the night before on the eve of the Passover, okay? So the Jews weren't able to hold their feast. Can you imagine? Making it impossible for the Jews to celebrate their feast. So these are just 3 things that I brought up from the history. These are the Samaritans. These are the Jews and how they feel about the Samaritans. Allow some of these facts that I'm giving you. Read them for yourself at home. Look them up. Nehemiah's time. Look them up. First Kings. Trace it a little bit. There's a lot more. I'm just giving you a highlight reel. There's a lot more on how to get to where we're at with Jesus and this woman. Now I'm going to close this part with this. That Jesus displays an amazing ability to ignore 500 years of old hostility between the Jews and the Samaritans. So what really happens in this conversation? What is Jesus really saying, displaying? What is going on? What can we pick up? Here's a few things that I've gleaned. Here's a few things that I found. Here's a few things that I believe that are going to allow you to start seeing like Jesus, and start being able to think like him, and start being able to move in the Spirit when you allow yourself to trust his ways above the ways that we have been taught, about the ways that we think of society and our culture and of what we think is a normal way of thinking, what we think is the right way of thinking. Let us open our eyes. Let us open our eyes. We're talking 500 years of going back and forth. The Lord shows an amazing ability to ignore this. It is no wonder now, like now I know why the Samaritan woman was taken aback by the request and the need of Jesus toward her. Jesus thirst, a Jew and a Samaritan woman. The conversation begins. Part 3.